Okay, today I want to continue on from where I left off on my last video, where I created this pulley model. And if you want to see how I did that, there's a link in the description below. But now I want to export it to Blender, so I'll select the model and come up here and click on the P and choose Export. And here I can choose my destination directory, my file name, and file type. And you have a few different options here. But for exporting to Blender, OBJ is fine. So I'll hit save, and now the model looks really rough and low poly, but I can fix that here in the export options. And the first thing you want to do is decide if you want tris, quads, or n-gons. I typically don't use tris. I always go with quads or n-gons. So I'll switch to quads, and right away you see I have a much cleaner looking mesh. But it does create a lot of geometry, and for something like this, I don't really need all these polygons. So I'll switch to n-gons, and now you see I have a pretty clean mesh. So I guess it depends on what you're going to use the model for, but if it's just a static mesh object like this pulley, n-gons work perfectly fine. Next, you can turn off the wireframe if you want to preview how the model will look after you export it. But I'll leave it on for now while I run through these other options. And next up we have density, and it's set to 0.5 by default. But if I increase it to 1, you see the mesh gets a lot smoother. But it's a bit too much around these fillets, so I can adjust that with this min width setting. If I enable it, you see the default setting is 0.01, and that's not good at all. So I'll set it to 0.003, and that's a little better. So I'll try 0.0015, and that's looking pretty good. And next you have this max width setting, and if you enable it, it has a default value of 1. And if you change this value to something like 0.01, you see it adds a lot more geometry to these large open faces. And I think this is more useful if you're doing tris or quads though. If I turn this off and switch to quads, you see I have a lot of triangles that might cause stretching problems when I'm texturing. But if I turn the max width setting on and change this setting to 0.01, I get a much cleaner mesh. But since I'm doing n-gons, it's not really necessary, so I'll just turn this off. Next we have edge plane tolerance and edge angle tolerance, and the default values typically work just fine. But if you want a really super smooth model, you can set the edge angle to 0.01, and now the model is really high poly. And if I turn off the wireframe, you can see how smooth it is. And you also have face plane tolerance and face angle tolerance. And these are linked to the edge plane and edge angle by default, but you can enable them and adjust them independently if you want. I typically leave them linked and don't mess with them though. And these other options here at the bottom I never touch, so I won't be talking about them. But with all these settings, you really have a lot of control over how smooth your model will be when you export it. And something I usually like to do is export a high poly model and a lower poly model, and then I can take both models into a program like Marmoset Toolbag and bake out a normal map and all my other maps. And then I can use the lower poly model in my renderings. So for this model, I might export a high poly model with a density of 1 and a min width setting of 0.001 and an edge angle tolerance of 0.01. And then I could export a lower poly model with a density of 0.98 and a min width setting of 0.002. But for this tutorial, I'll just export a single model with a density of 1 and a min width of 0.0015 and click OK to export the model. Now here in Blender, I'll come over to the scene properties and set the unit system to imperial and the length to inches. And then I'll come up here to the file menu, import, and choose OBJ. And I'll select my OBJ file, but if I hit import with the scale set to 1, the model is going to be way too big. So I'll need to apply a scale, and the scale factor to go from meters to inches is 0.0254. So I'll input that here and then hit import. And now I have my model here, but if I open up this side menu and go to the item tab, you see my scale is still set to 0.025. So I'll need to hit Control A and apply scale. And now you see the object scale has been reset to 1. And you can see the dimensions of the model are 12.5 on Y and Z and 6.75 on X. And that matches the dimensions of the model I created in Plasticity, so the scale is correct. But if you want to double check, you can hit Shift A and add a cube and set the size to 12.5. And you see it's the same size as the pulley. So I'll delete the cube and I'll show you another way to check the size of your model using the measure tool. Just click to activate it, and it's going to be a little difficult to accurately measure this model since it's cylindrical, but if I hover my cursor here close to the edge and then hold down the control key, I can snap to a vertex. So I'll left click and hold down my mouse button, and now I can drag out a dimension line. So I'll move over here, and now I can snap to a vertex on this side. And I think this looks about right, so I'll let go of my mouse button, and that will place a dimension here. And you can see it's pretty close to 12.5, so again, the model is the correct size. So now I want to get rid of this dimension, so I'll hover my cursor at the end of the dimension line until the symbol changes, like that. Then click to select it and delete. And now if I take a close look at the model, it's looking nice and smooth with no shading errors. And if I switch to edit mode, where's edit mode? Oh, I don't have the model selected. Okay, now if I switch to edit mode, you see the topology is the same as what I had in Plasticity when I exported it. So I'll switch back to object mode, and I can try out some different matte caps. And I think this gold one looks nice. So that's about it for this one. As long as you apply that scale factor when importing, your model should import at the correct size. But if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.